So I've worked with probably hundreds of millionaires at this point. And over the years, I've learned that there are a lot of different ways that millionaires think differently than your average broke person. But today I want to share with you 3 of the ways that they think differently that have made the biggest, most profound impact on my life personally. So the first one of these is that broke people tend to ask the question, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? They look at the world through this very transactional lens, as though it's a zero-sum game where for me to get ahead, I have to take away from you. And that if I'm going to do any kind of work, I need to be compensated for it. And it needs to be in direct correlation to the amount of work that I'm doing. And I was guilty of this for so long, where I would go and I would do the job that I was hired to do, and I wouldn't go any further than that. I wouldn't go above and beyond. I had this very quid pro quo mentality where if you want me to work harder, then pay me more. If you want me to go above and beyond, then promote me, right? That was the way that I saw the world. And so you're going through this existence as though you're on the lookout for yourself, always being afraid of being taken advantage of, that you're getting your fair due, so that nobody can, step on top of you. And like, that's how people, like broke people, think that you get ahead. Whereas rich people, they think about it fundamentally different. So instead of asking the question, what's in it for me? They ask the question, what's in it for you? And they lead from that position of flipping the script and saying, this isn't a winner takes all game. In fact, this is an infinite game where we can all benefit. We make the pie bigger, and then we can all share in bigger slices of that pie. It's not just a limited pie that only has so many ways it can be divided. So collaborating and working together, it's the rising tide that lifts all boats. There's plenty of abundance to go around. And so they operate from this position of trying to figure out how they can help you get what you want, because they understand this concept that Zig Ziglar talked about all those years ago, is that you can have everything you want in this world if you just help enough people get what they want. So that's the first thing. That's the first way that broke people think very differently than rich people. The second way is broke people, and when I say broke people, understand that I'm not just talking about being like financially broke. There's different levels of being broke. There's, relationally being broke. There's emotionally and physically being broke. But what I find is that broke people tend to ask the question, what should I do next? What should I do next? And they ask this question hoping somebody will tell them. Somebody will give them the blueprint. Somebody will hold their hand and say, go do this, then go do that. And it's not their fault, honestly. That's how we were trained in school, right? School teaches us, show up, sit down, face forward, you get the assignment, turn it in on Tuesday. By next Wednesday, we're going to have a test. And then at the end of the quarter, you're going to graduate and you're going to go on to the next class. Here are the 7 classes you have to choose from. Okay, cool. Now go do them, right? Everything is laid out for us. But the problem is that in this life, you are compensated in proportion to the magnitude of the value you bring. And if you're sitting around waiting to be told what to do, then it means you're just an extension of somebody else's will. You're just hands. You're not a brain. And hands typically don't get compensated very well because there are twice as many hands in the world as there are brains. Maybe not entirely true, but roughly speaking, there are far more hands to do the work than there are brains to tell those hands what to do. The other frame that I've used for this in the past is that if you're sitting around waiting to be told what to do, then you're just a cog in the machine, and cogs are replaceable. And so the way that rich people tend to think about this question isn't what should I do next, and then hoping that somebody else tells them the answer. They go out and they say, what needs solving now? What needs solving now? And they go and they solve it. And the thing is that you're compensated most for solving problems the world doesn't even realize that they had. If you're solving a problem that everybody knows that they have and it's already been solved in 100 different ways, then you're in kind of a commoditized industry, and that's fine. That means there's a demand there, right? When it comes to solving problems, people want to learn how to make more money. They want to be healthier. They want to be in better relationships, right? Like those are kind of the core problems all humans face. But your ability to solve those problems in new, novel ways is what allows you to get ahead in the game. And that is why broke people stay broke, is because they're just sitting around waiting to be managed. And if you want to get ahead, you have to be able to manage yourself. So that's the second way that rich people think very differently than broke people. The third way is that broke people tend to exchange their time for money, thinking time is their most valuable asset. And you've been brainwashed to believe this. This idea that time is a resource that you control is completely wrong, because you don't control your time. Time doesn't even have like an objective measure in reality. Your perception of time is very different than my perception of time in this moment, how you're consuming this versus how I'm feeling in this moment producing this, right? Your objective measure of time as you approach the speed of light, relativity says, you will experience it differently than I will. A second of time, a unit of time when you're 30,000 feet above the earth is very different than 1 second of time at sea level, right? So we know that there's no objective measure of time, and it's not something that you can exchange anyhow. So when somebody says, give me some of your time, that's not really what they're asking for, right? But yet this is how we're trained, again, to think about value, to think about money. We go in, we put in the hours at school, and then we graduate. Regardless of whether you got an A, B, or C, doesn't matter. You put in your time, you get your degree, right? But in the real world, if you want to get ahead, if you want to build wealth, you can't play that game. You can't play the game of exchanging your time for money and thinking through that frame, because one, you don't actually control your time. And two, even if you did, you have a finite amount of it. So it's not going to do you any good unless you're charging a ton of money for that time, which you can't do. The way that rich people think about money isn't about exchanging their time for money. It's about exchanging value for money. And the value that you can deliver in a moment of time is dependent on your energy, your focus, your resourcefulness, the magnitude of the problem that's being solved, your competency in solving it. There's so much more that goes into exchanging value and solving problems for people rather than just punching a clock and putting in your time. And I thought about this completely wrong when I was younger. I was thinking, oh, I need to go work overtime. I need to go put in the extra hours, and I'm going to save my money, and that's how I'm going to build wealth. And it never worked out. It wasn't until I divorced my expectation of time from value and instead just said, how can I add more value? Because at the end of the day, that's what people want. They don't want your time. I don't care how long it takes you to cut down the tree. I just want the tree on the ground and out of my yard. So if you can do that in 20 minutes, huzzah, you've added value to my life. I don't care if it took 8 hours, right? So figure out how you can exchange value for money rather than time for money. Think about asking the question, what value can I add? What problems can I solve next? Rather than asking, what should I do next, and expecting somebody to tell you the answer. And stop asking what's in it for me, and instead flip the script and say, what's in it for them? You do those three things, you make those three mindset shifts, and I promise you, on a long enough time frame, you are going to find yourself in a financially much better position than if you were to adopt the broke ass mindset. So don't do that. I'll see you guys in the next episode.